I started this project, I thought maybe what I could do is focus on the fact that I love gardening and I love planting things and show my little seeds that are growing here. Uh, I realized that that's probably not something that people are as interested in as I am, and that I don't know how that would relate as well to being an English teacher or helping people to see the value in it. So ultimately, I decided to change my mind and go an entirely different direction. I went out to my yard and I decided to lay out a 1 foot by 1 foot square. It had snowed, so I had to kind of wait for things to thaw, but the idea was that I would lay this out, and then as it started to melt, I would have a look at the area that I've staked out, and then I would just sit and kind of keep a log of whatever I saw. So that's what I did. I got a notebook and just sat and recorded everything, and I mean everything, down to like the tiniest speck, and just keep track of how big it was, where exactly in my grid it was, the size of it, that kind of a thing, and everything I could see. So something that I started to realize were things like this airsoft BB. When I zoomed in close and started looking at them through the lens of a camera, and especially just getting down and looking at them, that they took on a different shape. Take this rock here, for example. Just looking at it from above doesn't give you much, but you get in there and look at it, and it takes on a new meaning almost. It becomes something else when you get into this close-up view. These little plants, for example, from the top, these plants don't really look like much. There's not much to see. Some of them you have to look pretty close to find them. But as I got in close and started looking at what they look like from the camera angle there, I noticed that there's something more going on here. That this tiny little landscape has its own feel to it. It almost feels like this other world. That idea of it being this other world really jumped out at me. And as I looked at things like this huge crack, for example, in the landscape, the closer in I got, the more it looked like things that I was familiar with in the large landscape. This looked to me almost like this giant cliff from this lower perspective, almost as if it were a big canyon. And as I panned around with the camera and just saw it from this perspective, I really felt like I was stumbling on something big. So I could tell that I needed to come up with some system of figuring out where things are using north, south, east, and west. So I decided to take this place and divide it up into sections, sort of like regions, and give the regions simple names. But I wasn't totally satisfied with that, and I love Scotland names. My ancestry is from Scotland. They originate from the Isle of Skye. There's some of the most amazing names there, things like Dunvegan, Edenbane, Halistra, Dunhallen, and then of course there's the pretty weird stuff like Fasach and Fediniquari, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but Yiginish. Anyway, I think you get the picture. My goal then was to take some of these names and start putting them on the map. And so we got Dunvegan Forest up in the right, in the top right, Edenbane, and of course the Edenbane Canyon down there. Off to the west, we got Dunhallen and the Dunhallen Plateau. And the center, of course, Strathern, the lovely Texas-shaped Strathern, and the Kudrek Lowlands and the Drynuk Highlands. So it's starting to come together. The Austell River flowing from the Dunvegan Forest, the Drynuk River from the west, all combining in the Edinburgh. So perfect. And you throw in a couple of cities, the whole place, I call it Halistra, and some roads, and there you go. So where is this going? Bottom line, I'm actually not certain. That's part of what makes this so exciting. Over the next couple of weeks, this landscape is most definitely going to change. So I think I want to use that as a way to guide the story. Things like, what effect will weather, wind, dogs, teenagers have on this land? What is the mysterious white orb, and what does it do? Will Bruce the Ant survive his tumble through Edinburgh Canyon? Answers to questions like that, and more, I'll have to save for another Wireless Wilderness Wednesday.